Okay, welcome to class, everybody. Today we are going to be learning a little bit about the Great Depression. Okay, so to start off, we must first understand what the Great Depression was. The Great Depression was a worldwide economic depression that occurred from 1929 to 1939. Stock prices plummeted as well as declines in industrial production and prices, mass unemployment, as well as a sharp increase in rates of poverty and homelessness. So there's three main things that led to the Great Depression. The first being the stock market crashing. The stock market crash caused a major decline in stock market prices, causing investors to pull out their stocks, leading to a huge decline in stock market prices. The second was the collapse of world trade. Smoot-Hawley tariff impacted prices of international trade, raised taxes of imports by up to 40% in some instances. And thirdly, bank failures. So bank failures was something that was a major issue during this time because banks were not regulated. People were borrowing more money than they had to invest in the stock market. When people tried to get their money back from the banks did not have enough in their reserve to give people their money back, leading to people not getting money, leaving them without money. One of the reasons this happened is because the banks were investing people's money in the stock market to try to make profit as well. Some of the major effects of the Great Depression, the economy shrunk by 50%. Unemployment rates peaked at about 24.9% or 25%. A third of the nation's banks failed, losing about $140 billion. The stock market lost 90% of its value. World trade decreased by 66%. And deflation caused the prices of goods to fall by 38%. So now we will watch a short video to learn a little bit more.
The year is 1918, and after 4 years of conflict, the First World War is finally over. America has emerged as one of the victors, and is about to enter a period of economic prosperity and cultural change known as the Roaring Twenties. Things start off pretty strongly as the post-war economy is seeing a boost. Troops are back from the war, delayed projects are springing up again, and hey, more women are entering the workforce, meaning that more people have a salary to spend, and companies are looking for a piece of the money pie. So in 1920, we see our first radio advertising, and it seems to be working. Recent inventions like the vacuum cleaner and the electric washing machine are becoming hot commodities. And hey, since things are looking pretty good, the banks are giving out loans to everybody, meaning that even more people can buy the latest and greatest gadgets. Before you know it, everyone's getting a car too. Henry Ford's T-Model, to be exact. And with it, life is becoming a lot easier. Now you can do the Charleston across town and be home for your evening smoke. All of this is making companies very rich, and the average American is making good money themselves. Now, people are starting to look for things to do with their newfound wealth. Buying a good laundry machine? Nah. A new car? Don't need it. Oh, wait, what about investing? Yeah, that's it. After all, why be rich when you can be more rich? So the stock market becomes a pretty popular practice. And with so many people buying, investors are finding it very easy to make money in stocks. Soon enough, everyone thinks they're 1940s Warren Buffett. And I mean everybody. Cooks, shoe shines, taxi drivers, you name it, everyone is trading like a Wall Street tycoon, pouring their life savings into whatever security is hot that day. In fact, there's so much money to be made, people are taking out loans to invest even more, and banks are happily collecting the interest. By the way, those same banks are looking to invest more money too. And soon enough, they begin borrowing money from customer bank accounts to buy stocks. But since things are looking up, no one's noticing, and overall things are going pretty well in America, financially anyway. And as we experience flopper culture, prohibition, and the rise of jazz music, people are making good money on the market. By 1929, America's total wealth has doubled, and investments are up 218% since 1922. In fact, the stocks are rising so fast, companies are having a hard time keeping up and justifying their stock price. Wait, that's not good. And hold on, production actually seems to be slowing down. Henry's not making as many T-models, and people aren't buying as many things. It looks like companies may have overestimated their growth, and now wages are falling. And all that easy tax is dead. Well, people have taken out quite a bit, and interest rates are starting to rise. But wait a minute, the stock market is still down. That doesn't seem right. Even though the economy is looking worse for wear under the hood, investors are more or less ignoring these problems and buying and selling as if everything were exceptional. Sure, we see a few shakeups and close calls, but things are still largely positive, and people are still gambling on the markets. But over time, the voice of reason is getting louder, and investor uncertainty is increasing, which brings us to October 24th, 1929, Black Thursday, as it's called, the theorized start of the Great Depression. Investors have been royally spooked, with headlines reading, and when markets open, they start to sell, and I mean sell. 12.9 million shares to be exact, a new record. And at opening bell, things fall 11%. People are selling so much that price takers can't keep up with the volume, so people don't even know what their selling price is. And all this selling is dragging the stock market down, erasing large chunks of America's wealth, and things are about to get worse. While markets recover later that day, come Black Tuesday, it's an outright panic. The Dow Jones falls 12%, and that record we set last Thursday, yeah, we just broke it again. The markets lose $14 million in one day. Some shares are now worthless. People have lost their life savings, and Americans who borrowed to invest are absolutely crushed. And so, friends, here we are. The Great Depression, the worst economic downturn in the history of the industrialized world. The Dow Jones falls for another 3 years after this, losing 90% of its value from its high in 1929. Many lose their jobs as companies shut down. And it's not just investors that are hit. Remember that money the banks borrowed? Well, a bunch of it is lost in the markets too. And people are only getting back 10 cents for every dollar they had in their account. Banks across the country shut down, and unemployment reaches its highest level in U.S. history, 24.9%. By this point, breadlines, soup kitchens, and homelessness are common sights. Whether you invested, borrowed money, or even just held money in a bank account, the Depression found a way to hurt you financially. Times would be tough throughout the 1930s, and fiscal intervention from Franklin D. Roosevelt would do little to stop activity. In fact, it wouldn't be until the rise of the Third Reich in Germany that we would see an end to the crisis. You see, the Great Depression wasn't just felt in America. Rather, with recent globalization, its effects were felt around the world. And in the darkness, we saw the rise of Hitler, who used the despair of the German people as a rallying call, ultimately leading to the creation of the Nazi Party and the start of the Second World War in 1939. The war created jobs in America, ironically ending one tragedy, the start of another. Experts can't agree on why the Great Depression was as bad as it was, but there were valuable takeaways from the hardship. It demonstrated just how powerful the greed and alternatively the fear of the markets can be when they get out of control, while demonstrating the destructive potential of speculation and debt. Laws would later be introduced to safeguard financial institutions and deposits, and during his time in office, Franklin D. Roosevelt would introduce the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation and the Securities Exchange Commission, institutions targeted at protecting the wealth of Americans that still exist to this day. Few are left who remember the hardships of the Depression, but we'd be foolish to forget the lessons it provided. After all, fear, greed, and speculation are far from bad.
Okay,
The year was
so
1918, and after 4 years of
so some of the takeaways we see from the Great Depression, obviously, super hard time to find any positives, but there was some positives that came out of it, and one was the formation of the FDIC and the Securities Exchange Commission. These are two super important programs that help protect the wealth of the American people, which ultimately led to banks being safer to use. Both of these are still intact today. Some of the negatives a little further down the road. As the video mentioned, Hitler used this time of despair as a rallying call, and ended up creating the Nazi Party, which ultimately led to World War II. World War was something that pulled America out of the lasting effects of the Great Depression, just because it gave people jobs again to manufacture goods for war. Although the Great Depression was super terrible time, I think it's important that we learn about it and study it so that we can have better knowledge and use that to our advantage in our life moving forward. In the description, I put a Google form just to check for understanding so that everybody can get a good grasp of the lesson. If you could please fill that Google form out in a timely manner, and we will move on to our next lesson. Thanks so much, and have a good rest of your day, everyone.